Alexander Graham Bell. Alexander Graham Bell was born in Scotland on March 3, 1847. He was a Scottish-born and was an American inventor, also a scientist, and was a teacher to the deaf-mute too. His mother was almost deaf, and his father electrocuted the deaf kids. Alexander Graham Bell's story went on, and the main point about his life is that anything is possible. He went to school but had to finish early due to the moving of his family to London. As many know, he was a deaf person, and that carried on his life from when he was a baby. After moving to London, he was a college student there, then went off to take an exam for a university college in London, but had to cut short again for traveling. As you can see, he relocated every time instead of staying in one place. Bell also had brothers who both passed away to tuberculosis. After his school life, he moved to Boston to become a teacher to the deaf. One of his students was Mabel Hubbard, and despite the 10-year difference, they fell in love and she became his wife for the rest of their lives. Love and support from others gives you the mindset that you can do it way better than others dragging you down. It doesn't matter if you're uneducated, all you need is yourself. One invention can expand everyone's thinking and make changes to history. Alexander Graham Bell's background story is that he became a frontier when he invented the first telephone and got credit for it. He also made quotes, but he was more famous for inventing the telephone. According to Google, Thomas A. Watson had helped him invent this big project in this late afternoon, which was the time they had invented the first telephone. The idea came to Bell when he was helping the deaf people trying to learn how to understand more about what people are saying other than sign language and mouth lip reading too. He was trying to improve the capabilities of telegraphs, which led to the invention of the telephone. He aimed to make different tones when transmitting and receiving the different tones of each and every message. His other reasoning for the telephone was for communication to be easier and faster to use to people. As I thought Alexander's wife had something to do with this invention, she was just a regular wife who supported his decision in making this invention. An interesting fact about the first telephone was that this project was worked on for 2 years straight before showing the world the invention or showing the United States office of what he was working on. It is the patience you have for working on something this long, and that is the key to everything. Someone like Bell is someone with a creative mind that puts it to good use, and he did so when he was inventing the first telephone. Another information you should know about the telephone before it was invented was that people used written letters and face-to-face communication, which was harder to people, so they thanked Alexander Graham Bell for inventing the telephone to make communication for them faster. So on the telephone, touching heartfelt story of why he worked so hard on this just for deaf people, which I'm about to explain. Now, the story behind the first telephone was so the deaf people would be able to learn easier understanding of what people were able to say. As all may know now, Alexander is deaf, and so his life goal was to cure the condition shared with him, and that was what gave him the inspiration of how to create something that could be easier for them. People may ask, why telephone? But let me tell you why. Back in the days, people had a harder way to communicate to other people, so Bell had to at least come up with something. Also, back in the days, there were wires to batteries and needles, and that's all Bell needed. Now, this is a documentary to explain more of how Bell thought of the first invention of the telephone.
In the mid-19th century, telegraphy was considered a miraculous technology, but its limits were quickly reached, since only one message at a time could be transmitted down the telegraph wire. The telegraph companies of the time invested heavily in research in an effort to increase the transmission rate, along with their profits. The greatest inventors of the 19th century, among them Thomas Edison, were hard at work on a solution. Edison's genius produced a machine that could send up to 4 messages at the same time. Alexander Graham Bell, an unknown teacher of deaf mutes, also threw his hat into the ring in this technical race, although for other reasons. He was eager to help people take communication to new heights. An original drawing from his diaries reveals how Bell went about solving the problem of voice transmission. Sound waves produced by a voice cause a membrane to vibrate, moving a thin metal sheet within a magnetic coil. This generates an electrical current with subtle fluctuations that are transferred to a membrane at the receiver, which makes them once again audible. At least this was his theory, but turning this theory into reality took many attempts and experiments. Bell worked day and night on the problem of transmitting speech over distance. He invested every penny he had and confronted the best engineers of his time. In March 1876, Bell and his assistant Thomas Watson held the first telephone call in history. On his 29th birthday, Bell achieved his lifelong dream. He received the hotly contested patent for a technology that remains an indispensable part of our lives to this day. He wanted to revolutionize telegraphy, but instead he invented the telephone. Bell unveiled his invention to the public at the World's Fair in Philadelphia, where he was awarded a prize for the most useful invention of his time.
The press showered him with attention. All at once he went from being an unknown inventor to a personality known throughout the nation, perhaps even the world.
The demand for Bell's telephones was gigantic, but initially they were only for rent, not for sale, allowing Bell to retain control over the telephone business. His fortune grew accordingly. After Bell became known as the inventor of the telephone, many other scientists tried to claim the title. Even though other inventors had been working on similar ideas at the same time, Bell's telephone remains a pioneering invention to this day. This is most likely because he was the first to receive a patent for his invention.
The telephone made a huge impact on people's lives by helping them achieve better possibilities, such as making communications easier and faster for them. For this outcome, people should be excited, and they did, so they don't have to travel all over the world to meet the person they needed to meet. It even gave them the advantage to negotiate business and sign contracts more quickly and efficiently. That would mean saving money so that they don't have to travel but could just use the telephone to negotiate their plans there. Before the telephone wasn't even finished, people were skeptical more than fear. But for what reason? Look how Alexander proved everybody wrong. It was also to have a real-life conversation with someone in the world. It literally just makes communications easier for them. Do you know the first words that were spoken there? If not, then it was, "Mr. Watson, come here, I need you." Those are now called the famous words. If you were to get this message, what would you have said? Another change it has made is how it expanded our lives in the modern days. There is now many technologies in today's history, all thanks to the invention Bell did. There is now an iPhone, Android, and a Samsung phone, all expanded just because Bell invented the first, and look how it came out after. If it wasn't for the telephone, there would have been no kinds of technologies, and that is the number one change in history. It has expanded throughout the years, and this is how it is now. Even on social media too, one of the biggest changes in people's lives, and all thanks to what? The first telephone. Easy access as well with the internet, so many more things the invention of the first telephone has done for us in history and modern days. As said before, one invention can expand everyone's thinking and make changes to history. Now to conclude this, Bell believed in oralism, and that is what gave him the idea to invent the telephone. Thank you for listening.